around this country and a lot of people around this country who are still really unhappy, Jake. I don't think that those who voted for President Trump necessarily feel that he's done the things that he promised to do. And I'm going to talk to all voters about what they care about. And so far, what I've heard from Iowans is that they care about health care. They care about making sure it's a right and not a privilege. They care about public schools, that their kids are struggling, class sizes are too big. They want opportunities for their kids. And they care about better jobs, better pay, and being able to provide for their families. And so I think if I travel around this country and listen to folks about what they care about and then fight for them as hard as I would fight for my own kids, as hard as I fight for my own community, I think I can win back voters anywhere because it's about them and their lives and just having someone who will fight for them.
Let's talk about the deal that President Trump just put on the table to extend temporarily protections for some dreamers and undocumented immigrants brought to the U.S. as children, people with temporary protective status, in exchange for wall funding. You called it a bad deal. In your campaign announcement, you suggested more bipartisan in Washington. You said you're going to, quote, bring people together to start getting things done. So, okay, you think it's a bad deal. What's your counteroffer?
So my counteroffer would be what we put on the table a year ago and voted for, which was protect all dreamers, protect TPS status. We as Democrats certainly care about national security and border security. We have always cared about that, and so we don't mind investing in that. But we really want to protect the people who need our help right now. And then we can create a comprehensive immigration system that actually understands that people are seeking asylum, our help. And so that's the deal we should be talking about, protecting all dreamers, not and permanently a pathway to citizenship. Because the truth is, Jake, when I've met with dreamers, they're struggling. They have so much anxiety and fear. They might not be able to finish college. They might be serving in the military. They might have families. These are things that are hurting and harming people. And for him to say 3 years, again, he has no compassion. He has no empathy for the people who actually are suffering because of his decisions.
So a wall for dreamers is something that you would be willing to go along with as long as it was permanent protection for dreamers and DACA recipients?
Border security and investing in keeping us safe is a better way to talk about it, because a wall is a waste of money and will not actually help us create safety. We also recognize, like, we can spend money on making sure we stop drug trafficking and human trafficking and cross-border terrorism. That's what certainly I care about, and we can invest in that.
All right. You said Trump's immigration positions are racist. That's the word you use, racist. Now, as you know, you were more conservative early on in your career on immigration. CNN's K-Files out with a new report this week on your 2008 campaign website and a mailer sent from your congressional office. Back then, a long time ago, but still in your public life. Take a look. You said you were a, quote, firm opponent of giving, quote, amnesty to illegal aliens, unquote. You said English should be, quote, the official language of the United States. You called for expediting deportation of undocumented immigrants. Now, I know you have very different positions today. But let me ask you, if Trump's immigration positions are racist, were they racist when you held some of those positions as well?
They certainly weren't empathetic, and they were not kind, and I did not think about suffering in other people's lives. And one thing I did 10 years ago when I became senator and was going to represent 20 million people across our state, I recognized that a lot of places in my state were different, and I needed to understand what those constituents needed too. And so I took the time. I went down to Brooklyn. I met with Nydia Velasquez, who's been a leader in fighting for families for a long time, and I listened. And I realized that things I had said were wrong. I was not caring about others. I was not fighting for other people's kids the same way I was fighting for my own, and I was wrong to feel that way. And so I just said, I'm not gonna stand by and do nothing for families that are suffering in my state and in my communities.
So what's the difference, though, just help me understand, between your previous positions, which you characterize as wrong and not empathetic, and President Trump's positions today that you call racist?
So what President Trump is doing is creating fear and division and a darkness across this country that I've never seen before. One of the reasons I'm running for president, Jake, is because we have to restore that integrity to our presidency, to this country. We have always been a compassionate country. We have always cared about others. We've always believed in the golden rule. And what President Trump is doing is destroying the moral fabric of what this country stands for. We have the Statue of Liberty in our New York harbor. She stands for a beacon of light and hope for others who need us. Send us your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. We have never been afraid of immigrants. We've never been afraid of refugees and asylum seekers. This president has sown fear and division that just makes us weaker. And so I think what he's done is so horrible and so mean-spirited that I am nothing like him and never will be, because my values haven't changed. I will fight for other people's kids as hard as I will fight for my own.
Some cities in the U.S., such as San Francisco, allow undocumented immigrants to vote in local elections. You recently came out in support of allowing undocumented immigrants to obtain driver's licenses. How do you feel about undocumented immigrants across the country being able to vote in local elections?
I think the vote is for American citizens, and it's really important that we give immigrants a pathway to citizenship through comprehensive immigration reform so they can be part of all the blessings of America. When you create a pathway to citizenship, Jake, you allow people to buy into their Social Security. You allow them to invest in our public schools. You allow them to invest in their future and pay taxes. All those things is why you need a pathway to citizenship. And so I really hope we can do that through comprehensive immigration reform.
So that seems like a no, you don't support that. During your re-election
Correct.
bid...
I don't. I think it's for American citizens.
During your re-election bid for the U.S. Senate last fall, you made a promise to your constituents. Take a listen.
Just want to make this clear. You're saying you will not get out of the race and you will not run for president. You will serve your 6 years.
I will serve my 6-year term.
The Buffalo News editorial board is calling this a flat-out lie. What's your response?
I told the Buffalo News Board and I told you and everyone last year that I was solely focused on 2018 because the crisis at the moment was trying to create a check on President Trump. We needed to flip the House of Representatives, hold as many seats in the Senate, and I wanted to continue to serve New Yorkers. I will always fight for New Yorkers, and I'm still fighting for New Yorkers. But after we were able to flip the House of Representatives, I took a long, hard thought with my family about whether this is something we should consider, whether this is a battle that is something that we should take on as a family. It's an issue that I had to talk to my boys about, the sacrifices they will make. And I needed time to make that decision, a real decision about whether this is something that I believe I'm called to do. And I do believe that, and that's why I'm running.
But it was 3 days
at the time I said that, Jake, it's not 3 days, Jake. It's over the last few months.
No, but it was 3 days after you were elected that you said you were going to consider running for president, 3 days after
Exactly, because I told you before I ran that I needed to focus solely on electing a Democratic majority because that's the crisis we're in right now. And it takes time to think about these things. And I could not have done that before because I was focused on trying to win back the House, holding the Senate, and focused on New Yorkers.
Obviously, you being the first person to call, first Democratic senator, I should say, to call for then Minnesota Senator Al Franken to resign amid sexual misconduct allegations has been brought up on the campaign trail. You have faced some blowback from members of your own party for that, from Democratic donors. Now, you told our reporter, CNN's Dan Merica, that you think some of the blowback is sexist. Why do you think that?
Well, it is. And, you know, many people are very sad about Senator Franken, but the truth is he had 8 credible allegations of groping and sexual harassment against him that were corroborated in real time. The 8th one happened to be a congressional staffer, someone who works in my place of work. And for me, enough was enough. I have been leading on these issues for the past 6 years, speaking out against sexual assault in the military, against sexual assault on college campuses, sexual harassment in Congress. And I had one decision to make, Jake, and that was whether to continue to stay silent and not stand with those women who came forward. It's very hard to do. I also am a mom of young sons, as you know, and at home I was having conversations with Theo, who's 15, about what was going on, and he didn't understand why I was so tough on Al Franken. And it was very clear to me that I needed to be clear with him, that groping a woman or forcibly kissing a woman without her consent is not okay. It's not okay for a U.S. Senator, and it's not okay for my son. And so there was no room